Here we go. I'm gonna attempt to make a pizza at home in less than an hour. First off, I'm using 00 flour. I found this to be much better. This is the King Arthur. I used to use the bread flour, but the 00 flour forms it much better in terms of the dough and how you shape it. Then I'm gonna add about 4 grams of instant yeast. I did 200 grams of flour. This is about 4 grams of instant yeast. This doesn't need to be bloomed, so you don't need to add water. At this point, you just flour, a little bit of instant yeast. Next, I'm just gonna put a touch of sugar in it. I don't know if it's gonna do anything to activate the yeast anymore, but I did it. Next, we're gonna go with water. I'm gonna put it ends up being 123 grams. But basically what people say, you're looking for about a 60-some% hydration. I like around 60, so I can easily work with it. If you go a little higher at home, it gets a little sticky. So this was 124 grams, and I had about 200 grams of the flour, and then about 5 grams of the instant yeast. Here, I get it started with my fingers in the bowl. You could do this in a hand mixer, but I'm just doing it with my hands just because I like to do it. And it's a smaller thing. It's only a little dough ball. So I get it, and I'm putting some weight on it. And as you do it, you'll know when it's right. You just keep rubbing it, and all of a sudden, it starts to feel smooth. It comes together, and that's about when your dough ball will be ready. It takes probably 3 to 5 minutes of like really working it. I put it a little bit off to the side. I had a few more times to roll it, but I add olive oil to a bowl, flip it around, get a little coating on the outside of it, just so it doesn't dry out. I'm gonna let it sit for about 20 minutes while I get some of the other ingredients ready. I don't know if it's gonna help it bloom at all, but or rise, but we'll do that. So here's me, I'm trying to do one hand with this weird, I thought it was, oh, this is gonna look cool. This is a little hatchet, it's gonna cut right through this pepperoni. It was basically like dull, and I'm trying to do it one hand, and so this is an absolute hatchet job of a cut, but there you go, enjoy it. This is the pepperoni I'm trying to cut into eighths or quarters or whatever you wanna say. There it is, the final cut. I probably should have just showed that. Now we move to the cheese. I used a cheap mozzarella. It was a low moisture one and a little bit of cheddar. I probably wouldn't use the cheddar again because I think it burns a little too quickly. Now I'm gonna start shaping the dough. I'm going traditional, just around. See, here's where the 00 flour, it spreads, whatever you want to call it, a lot easier than the bread flour. I mean, this is, I'm making a nice shape really quickly. All I'm doing is pressing in the middle and pushing out. Now, what I'm gonna try to do to get it flavorful at home. So when I've used the instant yeast before, the dough doesn't have a ton of flavor, but I'm gonna try something different. So I put a little bit of olive oil in a pan, a little bit of butter. I kind of melt that. You probably could then assemble the pie and put this right onto the stove, but I don't use a pizza peel, so I was a little leery about moving the whole pie and dropping it. So what I did is I melted this butter at a very low heat, kind of where you'd cook eggs, put it on a cutting board. I put the dough right into it, and this is where I assembled the pizza. So then I just have a cheap sauce I bought from the store just for the purposes of making it quickly. Then here's me spreading around. Oh, look at that. How good is that? And then I take the cheese, add it on top. Next, I find the pepperoni, kind of finish it off. Then what we're gonna do with that, I put the top of the stove to about a medium heat. And I probably should have went a little lower. I did 5 minutes. So I have this dough over the olive oil and butter, and I'm gonna try to brown up the bottom a little bit before I put it into the oven. So I left this for 5 minutes. Here, I check it, and this was probably about 3.5 minutes. And this is probably when I should have threw it in the oven. See how it's starting to brown a little bit there? That's kind of the color I wanted. So if I was gonna do this again, I would do it for 3 minutes to 3.5 on the stovetop before then putting it into the oven at 450 degrees for another 5 minutes. But you can watch as that goes to see how it melts. So here I go, popping it in. I pop it into the oven. Bam. 5 minutes later, we're ready. We're taking it out. The cheese looks good. It's melted nice. What I didn't like is the outside of the crust didn't really get much color, as the underneath got a little bit too much color. so I probably was a little too high a heat on the outside. But when I tasted it, I wasn't even gonna show this because I was like, that doesn't look perfect. But it actually tasted really good. The butter gives the bottom of the crust a really good taste. So for a homemade pizza that you can make in 1 hour, this is a pretty easy way to do it, to really impart some taste to it. And I think if I did this a few more times, I could perfect it and really get it down. This was the first time I ever did it. I kind of just figured it out and went with it, and it ended up good. So if you want to try it, let me know in the comments.